Okay, jag hade kotakit kunastis tuigat kokatigat suya kumartakat kawanik.
All you who are here, I'm glad I can be here to make a few explanations to you.
Ya tayo kokatan haane hakayakete katunik.
I will speak about our land where I live, and sometimes there is difference about what we're telling.
Jag hade khaya akhlis koya.
I brought a picture here. These are my grandparents.
Yatli texas tikhla tla. Hutu khayta khayesh khalnik.
I'm telling my story from these older folk, my grandparents. They used to go in the camp lands with us, trapping. And then the time came to tell stories. And she would take this very, very seriously. I would listen to her. And then she would say, "It's good, my grandchild, that you listen. Don't forget it." For that reason, I remember. From the beginning, when the land issue came up, I also told this on the great TV.
And
this went to many places, prominent places such as Washington, D.C. And then it was left somewhere. And perhaps a time will come and it'll be spoken of about. And some of just the people born at the recent times think they're authorities on this, when we who have been here a long time are often not believed. And this is the way they started. They say in this land where I came that there was sand and no glacier. And on this area there were rivers. And way up on the mountain there was this thing as if it were stuck up there. No one knew what was up there, and from this the water came. And then and the ladies, and then they would see the water going down. And then they would cross over to the other side. And then from there they gathered their food. From the grassland area. And then the man said, "What are those women doing over there in the grassland area?" And these women are always going over there. And then they were called the people of the sort of grassland area, the women of the grassland area, Chukansha. And then the men called Chilkat.
Achaya
And for that reason,
ha'anix yuqayatuqa.
and that for that reason, it's our land, our place.
Ayatunaqequtua ikyayishatka.
And this girl, she was left there because people were invited somewhere else.
Aya
And then,
ya etiesxiti shatkas kuqaya tutlatu ikhtusiti
And
hu
this-
yawutlis
and
khusiti.
this girl was with her mother. She's about 8 years of age.
Khandaya uwa kutetunaqutua ikhishatka. Khandaya uwa
And
kuteshatkatsko.
this girl came to this one who was left.
Ya tqishio tuchiteu tutsineti
They
waqishe.
gave her little pieces of dried salmon, dried fish at Rishi.
Teshnesiyetu uqqunetu yakhan kautiya yishawat.
This girl was never left in a home in her condition.
Chaqutek tu iqututliu.
She was put in a private place at the stage of her life's development.
Ya society to kaututliye.
She was placed in a little place, something like a tent area.
Ayatlash khandaya uchikika shatkatsko
And
khu ayawutis kuxati.
this little girl came to her, ran to her,
Tachashokak wakeshua akhyasisa.
and she opened the little entrance, a door-like flap on the tent.
Ne sit kes.
And then
Yutu akhnis
she
kitahin.
started to call the glacier, ges.
Nas kitahin
Said
ayaw.
it 3 times.
Tututua kusiye shatkas kochet tutakhan that
And this
auchiki.
little girl that saw this thought it a very strange incident and reported this incident to her mother.
Akata tutachi
And her mother
usikate
said, go. Her mother said, go.
Tutukhani qanno.
Stay with this other girl.
Akaya
And then
yuan kakhayaw tu chishuqana.
they thought there was an earthquake, there was a shaking of the ground.
Deskuchkenaltin.
It was getting
Deskuchkhenita ya anatin taku.
and more was occurring.
Deskuch kulhit kena khunanin akayatse shatkats kuqaitak
And
kautuwan.
people were getting frightened.
Yashatkats kuchu at shaktewa yaqayakutli qat shaktewa washat.
Perhaps someone said she violated some of the Tlingit traditions and taboo and was losing her direction in life.
Akawa
And then
tutatawa te awakhe.
people sat in council regarding this.
Tapta yaqaqtuskut. Yaqaqtuskut teketkaqtu hunaya.
Let's take her aboard too. They were about ready to leave.
Tiyashat kwasi yawaqatlak.
And then this young girl said, no,
Tiyayakhat
I
kuqatye.
will stay here.
Tuwai kuatisya akhiatika kaktunik.
And this may be
Atiyahwaqaya.
be held against me as long as I'm around.
Akaya titet tuqayaqataw haje tu ashqulitaya tatatayi
And
tatuna.
so they felt she was so determined to stay. They left some things to warm, to keep her warm.
Tiya atkhatsu yatsaku achatasaya tuqahanit
And
atkatuchak.
they gathered provisions, food stores for her, food that wouldn't spoil so soon.
Kijaya hiti katu intakuksaki hiti.
And they put this in the house in which she would be living and probably eventually fall.
Wana nesaya.
And then
Kakatu kutatuuni kutunakatutuhuni.
sorrow came upon them when they were just about ready to depart.
Akawa kaucho baby wasuuni katuni kutiakakuyak sajak.
And then as if a little baby was to die, and that's the way they felt in this time when they were to leave. And then and then this girl that they were to leave, she would be one of the folk who would eventually be a mother of the peoples. She would give birth, she would have many children. And then the song came to one of our people, the Chilkat folk. She started to sing. I will sing. When they brought all things into the boat, the canoe was slowed, not moving too rapidly. And then and then she sang one part of the song. When her mother cried. And this song was sounding through the sounds of crying. And my grandmother would weep when she would tell the story of this poem. We don't sing this anytime. When we are in sorrow, then we sing this song. And now I will do this. My poor house, my poor home. Singing about her home that's about to be destroyed.
To take the Kushe
This is sorrow expressed now for her land.
Kushe
Ani, my land. I will be leaving in a boat. We have two songs.
Yeah. Yeah, to tell us it was Mayflower, yeah. Article the heat, the Taku, the take shake the cake out to a ship. Yeah, goes to two yet. Hakayuka. And the take she kissed the cow, she wants there.
He said it's probably similar to the time when the Mayflower left, that they had one song with deep sentiment, but he said, we have two.
Asaku to a side test, the Katia Shabe was to Saku Titio Satinka. Kayata, the cut out to a side, ha at the aya ha tea, aya, ahat to high, ha cheese that.
Geographically, all our lands have names where we gathered our food, especially in the Glacier Bay area.
There has been a question. People are questioning us. Does this really belong to them? But we have given the Glacier Bay different names around the Glacier Bay area, names, so we know that it belongs to us. And Dr. Soboleff mentioned the subsistence area is very difficult for us to get our food from there again. As the glacier was expanding, like she mentioned, it was just like a little pinch of your fingertip, that little white speck they see on the mountainside. But when, as she mentioned, that the whole earth beneath them was trembling as the glacier was expanding out, and they had to hurry and pack. Even if they were in a rush, like she said, they had to get together and plan how they're going to do it. And so her relatives have composed this song so they could have it in memory of the happening when they were moving out. So you hear, my land I will never see again, my tribal house I will never see again. When you go to Glacier Bay, you will see the glacier grew right over their land. And so she still feels this land rightfully belongs to them, Chukanadi.
Kaya pointed off a sick it's a tea. I mixed up with the clear who do a June, with the June. Taku and get us to June, always a rating, the cartouche as the Sakun. I had a connect again at Junakaji June. At the Wahas Nak Hard to one.
The boats, the canoes that were traveling, they stopped by Point Adolphus. And if you know the map of the southeastern, you'll know where Point Adolphus is. And among the people, they really believed in their dreams when they had a dream. And they had one person who really had dreams and things came to pass. And even our Tlingit people, she said, our people know, they have good dreams that meant something to them, and they believed in the dreams. So they even gave names on the person who dreams, like she said, Juneau Sachet, Juni Sachet.
Kaya tea uti tahet ate kukotuaka. Yekriawaka. Wiku ate naiha. Queer, you do a sacred queer. Who are they to Takuntaino Yateka Hisit to say it is eating, they are what you can share. Kayakatu was such to say. They are what you can share. It's a talk to kill in Nak. Against you out and Tlahet a cook to cook with the leak. The Katudian Shukawa, Taniwa, Takrina was Cesar who did the Yachtapasa.
Just wait, actually, I can't go on.
I didn't catch it.
And when the ice, according to what she is telling us, the ice grew out as far as Point Adolphus. And yadaknaka awa June, ayahas yan kay Sani.
Ayakajujun. Ya atasnak.
This man had a dream that there was two men there. They were white.
That woman and that man.
And there was a woman and a man.
It's
the girl who called the glacier out, like in her beginning of the story, called the glacier out like you do call a dog, gace, gace. And that's what this man dreamt right there at Point Adolphus.
Hasana Queen, has to get a shower, tack excursion in the day now, a goose kitan. Kagwantan quest, going tag bay. Chukanity quest spice guy.
And on their journey back, they talked to the glacier. This is enough de awe chukane de because of the person they left that the ice grew out on. And from there on, the ice broke back. It started to break back. As you see, boats can travel to Point Adolphus and all that. And then as on their travels, each clan claimed a place, like Ushkitan claimed the Excursion Inlet, and Chukanadi, Kagwantan, which one?
Groundhog Bay.
Kagwantan, Groundhog Bay, and Chukanadi, Spaskai. Yuksha. And then from there on, they found Huna. They settled in Huna. This is the end of her story. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Anna Tlanaught Katzeek. My father is a Shukach Adi. First of all, my Tlingit name is Skookum, and I believe I have already explained in Klukwan and why my name is Skookum. I don't believe I should go into that. You think I should leave it up?
It's interesting.
Anyway, my name is from when the Hashadehani, our leader at the time, was a spiritual man, and his name was Kichishdask, heavy wings, which alludes from the eagle when it's bringing in its prey. And the other was Ashashk, from the shark, Ashashk. And so, in other words, I would interpret that, sharp mouth and teeth, Ashashk. They were both our shaman, which you read in the books, medicine man, shaman. I don't want to call them witch doctor, but that's what the white man termed them for. In our Tlingit language, it's echt, spirit, yek joyas, what's echt? Medicine person is echt, like a prophet, in the olden days, and also a counselor. And he was also a seer, a person who can see the future, and who can see some things that no one else sees. But our people looked up to these kind of men because, like I tell my children, there was no Bible in those days. We didn't know, but they knew there was Hashagin Yah. Because the same people have told them that there is a great spirit up there, and here the spirits guide them and lead them, and still they said there was a great spirit up above that is greater than any spirit in the universe. And my grandfather and my dad used to tell me that, and when a child is born, there's always a yek, a spirit by them. that watches, that's with them. And my dad used to say, James Tlanaught, it isn't good to not to live right. You can kill the spirit that is watching you. And when you kill that spirit because of your wrongdoing and the way you're living, that isn't right. They gave us the moral standards, the same people, like Dr. Soboleff says, a prophet or the seer or the medicine man. They told us they gave us the morals, what we should live by, not to steal, not to tell lies, not to love one another, and not to take things that belong to other people or destroy other people's property. And so these are all the things that I personally go at. That's who guided our people. And like I mentioned as I spoke in Klukwan, that we were not the only ones aboard. We were not the only people that were traveling. Now this is when we're traveling up north. We have a song that goes with it, but I won't have the time to sing it. We've used it in many memorials when our loved ones have passed on. My sister, I can go on, my brother, my uncles, my uncles passed on, Tom and Jimmy. And the reason why we have these chants, we would not have it because I wasn't that sharp to memorize all this when I was just a teenager. But my father, James Tlanaught, he really loved his dad's people. It was a Chukane. And he wanted us, his father's people, to remember it. So he talked with my Uncle Joe White, Kasku, who was our leader of the Shungukedi Dakastina at that time. He was the leader, Joe White was. And they had counseling together with my mother, Tom Jimmy, and Sam Hopkins. My mother Agech. Anyway, they had counsels that we should have this all on a tape. My father heard about taping things. See, my father was in his, I would say in his 90s at the time, but he was very sharp in his mind. He knew exactly, and he would look at my children. My son, David Katzeek, is my older son. He would look at him and think, who's going to teach my grandchildren the songs? So we have the chants on tape recorder with my dad telling us the happening, why these songs were what was composed, just like the way Amy Marvin was telling you. That's how my dad talked. And when I play the tape, it's just like my dad is still there talking to us, you know. He would say, and then he would mention the songs, where it was composed and why, for what reason. But as Kijisdas was being guided, they would go into this big eagle spirit would be going. When it's flying, the boats were moving. And when it went into a cove, that means it's time for us to rest. And my father said they did not stay there only a few days till good weather. No, they stayed there. So the names that were given to these names, not only by us, there were Raven people aboard. Kijisdas' wife's name was Shusteen, who happened to be from the Whale House in Klukwan. And Kijisdas' Hastuchonik Anachtedi were aboard the boat. Shusteen Ayodowasa. And as they were going up, they traveled for quite a while. I told this to the children in school, because they would call on me to tell a story during social studies, and I would make a presentation to the children in school. So I felt today when they asked me, I better not just sit back and say, no, you know, you are our people. And there are young people who don't know this, so I feel free to tell you. And as we were going up the river, we didn't know the Chilkat. When they were traveling up, there were brushes. Trees were falling in front of where the canoes were going to go. There wasn't only one canoe, but ours happened to be the lead canoe. And when they were going up, they had to clear the brush from the sides of the river so the canoes could pass through. So mine would do what goods away, yak anak yak bahaya. Would do goods it's away, yechat do asachat goods. Names are very important, and like what Ellen Hayes yesterday as she talked, how names were so valuable and how aware our people were. Everything that's going on, they had to have a memory of it. And then my mother's name is Akech. There were big boulders, rocks. They had to clear the way of the canoes. Men got off and cleared the way for the canoe. So the name Akech, Tlingits were so, I always think of them, they were so wise. They didn't say Wudutlikich. They kind of shortened the name, Akech. And then when they got there, there's Hukaudu is my mother's name, my grandmother. Hukaudu, the first place they settled was at Katkwastu. There was a point there, and it looked just like moss hanging down there, trees, everything was growing down, and it was like a little cove, and they went and settled there. They stayed there. They lived there. Katkwastu. It's right below Klukwan, called I think it's 19 Mile. And then the eagle did not rest there. It rested where they were. It moved on right to Klukwan. And finally, they came ashore there. And then the name Juanich came. We have found a good beach where we could rest. So they pulled up their canoes. And my father-in-law, Dad Katzeek, he was quite a storyteller. I mean, he was a traditional bear, and he wanted me to learn to know these things. So he told me that he held me up highly. They loved me dearly. I would like for you to know the clan houses, the way we were aboard Shakokwan House City. We were were people who sat in a bow. Ayuna de'awe ayukakwan, which means ayuka. In the center was Kanach Tedi Shostin and her family. But like I say, it wasn't just one canoe, there were many canoes. And then the last one, and there was Kagwantan, and then we were at the stern because our spiritual man was guiding the boat. Troya Ayasatani was like the captain, today the captain tells you move on and tells you go into the cove. And so we were at the end. So our Thurderbird House is the very first as you enter in. My Uncle Joe White is the one who built the house for us. We dedicated in 1973. And I would like to have this down to my Uncle Joe White, Kuwanagaz Hasku. And that's another name I would like to mention too, Hasku. When they saw the Chilkat River full of different salmon, they Kasagu Hoesiti Hatiotlak Kasagu Ayakasku. And you'll hear it among the Kagwantan and among our people, we have a Kasku, and there's a Kasku because they were together on this travel. So we don't say, hey, you took our name from us. No, we're sharing it together. And my Uncle Joe White was a highliner from way back. He was one of the big fishermen from Huna, Takdain Tan. My grandfather was Takdain Tan. Yukisku Cake, Hakda Ish, Yeuduasa, Achlis Kushayodeha, Dusa, Yes Kudunik, So Yehan, Shkatnik, Kudunik, Yetsuhatuasak. And anyway, I have so much to tell. My grandfather told me about where they existed from and how and what, But anyway, the time doesn't give, I don't have that much time, and I cannot very well sit here and tell you about my grandfather because they're another clan without their permission. But anyway, on my Uncle Joe's, here is what he said. He said he had sleepless nights thinking about, he wants to will us money. He left his children with a $226,000 boat, a seiner, that he paid up for. He was a hard worker. He's one of the men that was raised by his uncles. Shatke was my grandmother's brother. Anyway, and he gave his other son another boat, over 100,000, Jacob White and Jerry White. And the boat, they still have the boats. And he still had money, and he was thinking, my niece, I really think a lot of you, he would tell me, because you have never given me shame. You have respect for me. That's why your life shows it. He would talk to me. And it's not up to me to tell you, what, but then this is just so my children and other people, and what the young people will know. He had sleepless nights. What shall I do? I have money in the bank. Shall I give it to them? I can give like 20,000 to my niece. Maybe you could say I was his favorite niece because I was always by my uncle, giving him food. He doesn't need it, but that's how we were brought up. Your brother, if you have any respect for me, you're not gonna sell them anything. You're gonna give it to them because you love them. Show them you love them, even if they have. And so my Uncle Joe married Dastia from to me, there were elite Koho clans, Luknachadi from Sitka. She was a beautiful lady. She never felt bad about what Uncle Joe was giving us. She was happy. She was kind. She was just, our Tlingit people will say, Yudu Digan. She was just shining like the sun. Her warmth filled us. She loved us. She told us. So even the boys called her Connie. Connie, your sister-in-law, you say Connie, or your brother-in-law, the men people say Connie. But my children just loved her and called her Connie, even if it wasn't a man, they would refer to her as Hi Connie, and love her. But I'm telling this because my Uncle Joe finally said, and he told it at the dedication, that I am going to rebuild the Thurderbird House. Shispe hit, Kaudliai hit. We have 3 names for our house. And it looks like a ranch-style home, but that's the best he could do. But when you go inside there, you can tell it's one of the old tribal house. We have tinagas in there. Tinagas, you know what tina is? Anawahas wishlisaye, shanguke didakayu atk. I'm not sure if I have that much time to tell that part. But anyway, the reason why we have tinagas, I know that story too. And anyway, Kitchishdash, I'm going away from Kitchishdash. When they stayed there, when they called all the people, not only I can't say just Shangukedi had a council. I could say that if I wanted, so I could lift myself up, but no, I was taught differently. And they called all the whole village people. Gachtusa aya yahin, wasa gachtusa yahin. The Katkau Adus, what shall we name our river? Wasegachtu sa yat so yatlak yaan. Yakeha dayuti saadi. So the time came by again. We're going to name the river. And it's really beautiful. Our people, our elders, our Tlingit people, not only Shangukedi, the whole nation, Tlingit nation, they were so wise. They called the river Chilkat. They shortened Chilkachadi. Chilkachadi Oahastukanach Yakuchich. They freeze the salmon in November. There's all kinds of species of salmon in Chilkat River, and it's rightfully called Chus. Chus is a cache. Chilkachadi. Salmon cache Yeawaduasa. Because there's all kinds of salmon. My brother-in-law, up to now, my brother-in-law, Dan Katzeek, still makes shashkuk and would send it down to me by plane so I could have some. In fact, I have some in my freezer right now. And it's a specially cured salmon from the Chilkat River. And I thought that was a great name for Chilkat, Chilkat. Chilkachadi kadahodoasa chas kachadi hini awe, fish, salmon, cache. And when you look at it and the biologists look at it, that's full of all kinds of salmon today. We don't know how it will be tomorrow, meaning the future. And so when again they had a session on Klukwan, wasagachtu sayaan, and they all agreed on Kijistas Goyea, Kahawasak Batit Atlakwa Nisakwaya. The story went to Henahoyan how Guja Hesa on Hesa Kahatua Ushko, at Katucha, Kaskotek Tak, Akadahaya how do a side, so who's one of the Sakhajiu. And Yatlakwan Hasko away. Has today tak shuhi, who's kana hasuti at, aka ewish ayahas ayawziha, Klukwan, Tlakwa ni aya. And I read in a paper the eternal village, the village that will always be there. And it's still there. And Kijisdas, when his time came, he knew he was a shaman, he was a medicine man. He said, now I'm telling it as my dad tells it on the tape. There's always men that help out the shaman, the medicine man. My time is at hand. Take me up the river. No, to us, at teen, there's a rock there. I said, my father-in-law, Dan Katzeek, and my son, David, and his dad, George, my husband, George, he took them up there with the canoe, and there was a huge rock. It showed where he sat. And this is a legend, it happened so many hundreds of years ago. You could see where he sat. There's an indent where a human person sat. That's where his life is going to end, where the Chilkat River flows from. And he composed a song, and I sang it at Frances Smith's memorial doing, because Frances Smith was, her husband was adopted he adopted my Uncle Joe White for his dad. So I use that song. It's a beautiful song. With the way it starts, it sounds just like a river rippling. And I don't have the time to sing it right now. But anyway, we have that song. And he sings about the world. There was a man standing here today telling us, what do you feel about the world? How do you feel about the earth, the universe, the cosmos? Ye nastat Tlingit ane. It is like the whole earth, the whole world is, the earth is moving on me. I'm being pressed. He was singing about his feeling. And there's other verses, but I will not go into it. But we have that song. And like I said, mentioned before, when I took Alaskan history from, I believe his title is Dr. Olson now. He's an anthropologist who's an instructor at the University of Alaska. He was telling me, he was telling the students, not only me, if you have a story and it's told by 2 or 3 people and you have a song to go with it, it's a historical fact. It's considered oral history. And he was very happy to, when I told him, I didn't tell him the story, I just told him we have a song about the Chilkat River and the happening and all that. And I only mentioned it because he was the guide, his eagle spirit guided the people up. And some young people might question, how come your crest is in the Qanachtedi? Among the Qanachtedi, among the whale house things. Our people were lowered down from the sun. This is another story after the settling in Klukwan, this before. Our name was Dakristina. Kodliai Hit means the house that was lowered down. I'm talking about our tribal house. The house that was lowered down, the Sun children, the story is told, their fathers told them, like they had a blueprint in their mind. Their father told them how they're going to build a house, and it's the longhouse. How they're going to build a fort around it, Nu Adag Achisayeh. And we have the sun blanket. I wear the sun blanket because the Sun children were lowered down from the sun by their father and how they were instructed. And again, I want to go back to James Tlanaught. Tlanaught, who was my father, and Gunhakuakan. Gunhakuakan, he was the last Kuakan here, that was done traditionally from Haines and Klukwan. Anachtediji dewa Kuakan Hositi Achish. Ajowe Gunhakuakan Gunhakua Wudutli Wudutsi or so. Punach Anyat ke awe ya Gunha, Yisikuya abalone Sitsi Ayotaka, Awe Wudutsi Gunha. My dad used to say, tell me, always wear something with an abalone on so they could recognize that you are Gunhakuakan. Daughter, not only me, my other. So this is a Thunderbird with Gunha inlaid in there. But anyway, it's not the idea of being proud, it's just the idea of, knowing your identification. It's not that you're going to stand up above people and kind of look down on them. No. My father taught us, and my grandfather, Archie White, from Hunatakdaintan. I wouldn't want to miss my grandmother's father's people, Arkiks Adi from Sitka. Wu tuyeu do asa achlik. How do ish wu to see awe. Chukanedi dachran koosity achlik how do. His name was Wu Tu from Sitka, from the Frog clan Kiks Adi. And but she was a Chukanedi's granddaughter. You see, these aren't killer whales. These are porpoises. And the back, this is my Uncle Joe White's vest that was made for him as a gift. He didn't know it was being made by Lillian Hammond. Lillian Hammond is one of our tribal daughters, Shungukediadi from Yakutat. But anyway, back to the reason I mentioned this and my dad always told us, and I want the young people to know this, no matter if you are way up there, in ranking, don't let your mouth tell people, let somebody else watch your life. And they are going to say, Shege an Yatko. Even if you are not an Anyatko, your life will tell other people what kind of a person you are. In other words, don't toot your own horn about yourself, you know. So this is I'm only telling this right now because we are asked to talk about where we're from and so forth. But anyway, my grandmother and my Uncle Joe wanted us all to know where we come from. And my grandfather, Archie White, would say, nobody knows. So Nasliede, so 300-400 years to Koyeo Kachuchak. Yakha desak sachate. One was Tlachyak Anashkadech City Agua. Iho Atunach Kiziti Achpansing Gitya Awukane. You might be related to the lowest of them. Your roots might intertwine with others. So watch what you say. Don't have disrespect for people. Shia Ayagidane means to me, be careful about your face. You know, when you have something on your face, everybody sees it. So they call, to me, it means be careful about your face, on how you live. Have respect for yourself. This is how I was taught. And back to the Kitchish Dust, the song. As I mentioned, I don't have time to sing. If my son David was here, he probably would have sang it. And I really appreciate my dad's people, my father especially, that gave us, that preserved our songs. And Uncle Joe, he could afford the tape. This was taped in 1960. 1959, they were taped. They were put on tape, the stories and the songs to go with it. We have many love songs. We have many songs from the interior that we do not have it on tape. My mother sang it on tape, and my son Dennis Katzeek taped it, but he somehow misplaced the tape. She taped so many Athabascan songs. I think we only used like 4 of them. But anyway, when you dance too, you just about tell your roots, you know, when you're dancing from where you are from. So I really appreciate the Angoon when they danced. I was sitting there because I was culturally brought up. I could just about see the happening, even if I don't know the stories about their singing. And last night's The Cannibal Man, I heard that story from my parents, and that was really done well. The Klukwan. And I have notes here of what I'm supposed to talk about. And you know, Ethel Hayes mentioned, we need to be aware of the happenings round about us so we could give names. I remember when the Hayes Highway was being built in 1941 during the war. My husband worked on it, and my grandmother made yearly visits to Hayes, to Klukwan, because she wanted me to know and all of us to know that we exist from there. And my grandmother, Anna White, she said, we can't just let it go and let it be. We have to have a name. So the next memorial doings came around. The name was given to me and to Louise David's sister, Elizabeth David. Her swiftness, the road. Only how many days it used to take our men, our Shangukedi, to go up. They would almost risk their lives for furs. They were packers, so we have the name Yindayank, saying packer, Yandayank. They were so talented in packing their blankets that when you opened it at a memorial doing, when they snipped it open, it stood up high, and you could hear it coming up. So that's where the name Kingasti comes from. Kegenusati Yahawenatich do await. At do go a kathodo asa David Katzeek, his name is Kingasti. like when the killer whales are finning. And the name was given to him by Dan Katzeek. It's Shungukedi name that was almost in the bottom of the name box. And he said, there is nobody is named Kingays Ti. It's your name. He came down when David was born and talked with my dad. That's how important names were in those days when the older people were still with us. My father and him talked. And they agreed on the name Kingays Ti. That's an old name. There were brothers, Yindayan and Kingays Ti were brothers. I'm not talking about 200 or so many hundred years ago. And the trail that was given to us, the story goes, there were people coming down, and I'm really going through fast, down the river, Chilkat River, and people were settled there. And Dan Katzeek told me the same story, and Ed Shotridge and my father, and Tom Jimmy. There was a saying in Klukwan, Chushki Kadach Akaudunayan Duwait Achwan Iko Ayakwan Ishandain Shudutsiku Kake Nestay Dohoch. Show your hospitality. The story is told about people who have said, go down the other way. And I could just see my father-in-law, Dan Katzeek, as he would tell me. Their house is the first one. They saw these people across the river. They didn't have boats, they had packs. Some of them had canes. They've walked a long ways to take care of my grandmother. He was the one that was in the car. I didn't go because the car was filled. My mother went, my father went, Leonard and my grandmother and the driver, my husband. They would go 25, 50 miles, and she bought gallons of wine, expensive wine. Now she's going to dedicate the road. And every once in a while they stopped. She had glasses specially bought, and she would give a little shot to the people, to my father and to my husband. Not a big glass, and then pour the wine. Pouring it on. Our great men has lost their lives on this trail. Now we have a highway going through. So they did that all the way up to Whitehorse. And I just thought I'd mention this because it was big doings for my grandmother at her age. And when we had a memorial, my Uncle Joe mentioned it. And the name, like I said, Tlachyash Disnukt. You don't even know how fast, in no time you're up there in the interior. So I don't know how much time I have. I didn't talk about the son's children being lowered, and this is 3:30. How long have I been on?
You have an hour and a half. Hour and a half.
In total.
That's total time left for the rest of the hour and a half.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Maybe I'll just say a few things about my dad. When there's a big sorrow or some sorrow hits in the family, you use your father's people's song. You say, Achish. My dad used to say, and my grandfather, when you're hurt, you run to your father for comfort. My Uncle Joe White, when he was dedicating the house, he called on Charlie Joseph to be the master of ceremonies. His daughter is here with us, Ethel, to help him because that was his father's grandfather. Kagwantan yedichowositi achlil kakdaish. Ajoa duslil kaw, that duslil kaw. That was the time I heard my Uncle Joe say, and he used Kakashkook song, which Charlie kicks adi has aya at Rautlier. Du Sik, the Ta Ishas aye, the Toasigu, the Shie. Tethas to Adich was teach, aye Rayakayan Kaslik, Pashkachok, Dokach, ye Owana teachas, the Shie at the Shie. So I just would like, the reason why I mention this is you run to your father when you're in sorrow. And so we have every right, as I told Agnes, we have every right, if anything happens in your family, you have every right to use your father's song. Even if it's a Raven song, you're going to ask someone in your father's family to start it, or your grandfather's song. And so I would like to mention something about Chief Tlanaught during the time of William H. Seward. You all remember the time they bought Alaska, so to speak, 1867. And after that, this place where we're at, Port Chilkat, was the very first army barracks, I guess you could call it that. And Chief Tlanaught, he wasn't a chief, they called them leaders. My father did not like the term chief, so he never used it. Hasha Dehani, the leader. But Chief Tlanaught was given the name chief from the U.S. He was assigning the lands to the people. He had the say-so, not because he was the head man. They always had counsel, like Amy Marvin said. And they said, it was hard for them, they can't speak, but they had to build, somehow they figured it out, they had to build the barracks. And so he assigned this section to the U.S. Army to build a barracks. And because they could not speak English, they can't write, very new people moving in, no one told them that you could stake out 160 acres and it can become yours. He just said enough room for the barrack for the army to be. And you know what they did? They took the whole one side of, all the way from here to Jokar's Cove, towards Lettenkoff Cove. They took that land, the army staked out 160 acres and took it away without, because they couldn't understand the English. And then they wanted, the missionaries came, they wanted a piece of land to build a church. And at that time, they were beginning to understand the English language, that we had young people who were interpreting. They want a piece of land for the Presbyterian church. And then they said hospital. It wasn't a Haynes house from the beginning, it was the Haynes, I guess you remember, what did they call the Haynes?
Mission.
Haynes Mission. But my mother-in-law, Margaret Katzeek, she said it was a hospital where ladies went to have their babies. She had her son, her first son, George, was born there. But anyway, they gave the okay for the missionaries to build where the museum is, the Chilkat. He gave them the land. He told them, go ahead, he okayed. And you know what they did? They took the whole Haynes side of Haynes to 1 mile, 160 acres. Chief Tlanaught gave them permission just to get enough land to build the mission on and the church. And then they asked for the school, the government school. And again, he okayed. Hayat Kichai, they got together. This is where our children are going to be taught the English. They're going to go to school. They're learn how to talk so they could protect us. And they took that land there where the Haynes Government School, he okayed it and gave it to them. So this is how our lands are taken. But my uncle Bean Fox, who is Bean Fox is Tsagwat's uncle. I'm trying to think of his name, his Tlingit name.
Green Fox. Taskutaka. No. Weha.
No, he was Tukachadi. And Kakin Eudo Asaduin Shukats. Yeah, Shukats was his name. He was pretty sharp. He staked out the land where my Uncle Austin has the Raven House. He staked out all that land. So when the Muncasters couldn't claim that place, they burned down their beautiful home. Instead of just giving it back to the native peoples, they weren't going to do that. They burned it, went to the ground just in 1954. But that's how the lands were taken away. But I just wanted to mention, we have Chief Tlanaughts' grandson with us, and may I ask you to just come forward here so I could introduce you? Dixon? Yes. This here is, wait till he comes up here. And I told this story on his behalf. He's been wanting to find out. This is, are you Richard? Richard Dixon from Whitehorse. And he is the grandson of Chief Tlanaught, Chief Tlanaught was my dad's mother's uncle, just like how my son is related to Joe White through me. So this is my bloodline relative, Louise Tlanaught Davis' son from Whitehorse, and he is of the killer whale, close of kin to Dan Katzeek, and his uncle was the founder of the gold, Keish. His mom's uncle was Keish. So he is a nephew of Keish, Skookum Jim. When you go to the museum, you'll see his picture. And Skookum Jim was married to my aunt, who is Yakuchta 8. Mary Cesar is named after her. And her daughter was Daisy, who she did not want to come back to Alaska. She stayed up there with her dad, with Skookum Jim. Skookum Jim's name was Mason, Jim Mason, his given name. But his Tlingit name was Keish. And when you look at it, it looks like cash, And I was just telling him he was named right, because my father, James Tlanaught, used to tell me that his Connie would come down here, would come down to visit Spoot and would give him a handful of nuggets. Connie na, And he was telling my dad that at that time the Tlingits didn't even realize how valuable it was. The little kids used it for marbles on the ground. And I know the story too about Keish, how he found that, but I will put it on my own tape because we don't have very much time here. But I just thought I'd mention this because I just found him and he just found me today at the A&S Hall as we were having lunch. I ran into Patty Duncan's relative, who is Adamson, again, another relative of Keish, Daklawedi. And so I appreciate the time you have given to me. I have other things that I would like to talk about, but like I say, and I know a little bit. I was married to my husband, George Katzeek, from Klukwan. And like I say, I sat in the memorial doings of my husband's from a young lady. I married him when I was in my teens. I was 16 years old at the time. And so I learned these cultural activities. I watched it. So like I say, I didn't learn it from the books, but I really appreciate the time you have given me because I want our young people to know that there are still some people like me around who knows how to go about things, and I may not, and I'm still learning, like from Amy Marvin. She's way older than I. And I really appreciated Charlie Joseph because he really taught us a lot too as he was in charge of our party. And I know if my son David Katzeek was here, he would say the same. We thought of him as one of our closest relatives, that which he is, my grandfather, Archie White's father's side people, Kagwantan Yedi from Sitka was my grandfather. And I believe anyone who would like to research Chief Tlanaught, I would like to mention this too for the records, and it's documents were given to my father, and it was passed down from Chief Tlanaught to Iti Adi. It was an ear, something that was given to him. It was about this stack of papers. And I used to read it. When I learned how to read, it had a ribbon around it. It was written by William H. Seward himself with his signature on it, and it was done on parchment. You know what I mean, parchment paper. And it wasn't worn out. It was handwritten in ink. My mother had it. My father passed away in 1962. And I got concerned about the papers, so I went over to my mother's and I said, Mom, I would like to look at those papers. My dad told me that it should be well taken care of. I was talking to her in Tlingit. And she said, Katzeek, you really surprised me, she says. This rightfully belongs to your father's people. Not to you. I'm not going to give it to you. And you know, she gave it to my uncle Horace Marks. And it was told to me that the Salvation Army in the year of 1963, it was given to them, but I believe the copies of it is documented in Washington, D.C. It had very good things in there. The only little thing I remember is, as long as Tlanaughts' descendants live, I would like for the United States to really watch out for them, that they are not mistreated. And so my father, when a person who could interpreted it to him, he realized the value of the papers, but it's somewhere. And I'm sure it's going to be found, if you look at the right places.
We want to thank Andrew Hope for bringing us the water. We had a hard time keeping our eyes open, both Walter and I. Not because we were tired or because we were weak. We're just trying to fulfill the scriptures. The young men will have visions, and the old men will dream dreams. We're glad that you can have humor. Sometimes humor is the best thing to. In these stories we're telling, it's very complex. We become emotional. It becomes complex because it involves certain people that perhaps could be offended. Stories aren't told, like Amy said, because of its complexity. Stories are kept quiet. But like I said the other night, in which Andrew Hope, I'm glad, wants to use it, is there ever an appropriate time? We'll just have to make the time appropriate for these things. My raven moiety, where did we come from? From the Juneau, God. How do we happen to be being? Our story reflects to the fact that during the time the great raven was creating the world, the Kanach Adde and Kanach they were one people at one time. I think I have a lady on this panel that will verify my statements. We had the box of the sunlight. In that particular headdress were made in two. We had one. And the family that moved from us, which is Jimmy Fox's family, had another one. Identical. And we also had the House of Migration headdress, raven against holding the House of Migration. And this goes back to the time of creation. The House of Migration, it was called Kudatanka. And Great Raven, it floated away from it. But he had answers for everything. He got a big, long octopus tentacles, and he threw it out to it, and the tentacle stretched out like elastic and grabbed onto the house. Said, God, what? Hey, ooh. He pulled it ashore and opened the House of Migration like the sandbox was opened. Lo and behold, came the species of salmon, started to make their migration. The Tankahede was also mentioned. Now, this creation of salmon being goes to the time of creation again. And when the dog salmon clan came among us and we adopted them into the Deshita, they had a dog salmon hat, but no song. So we sang the Kutatanka Hidikashiya, and today we are still singing the song from the time of creation. Sit katwa heya we ha we ya we ya we ya we ya ya ha sit katwa heya way ho way ho way ho way ho way ho way ho. This is when the salmon start jumping. He gave them the power to migrate and jump. Now, these were the time of migration. Then came the Ice Age. It's very important to know how long we have been here. Anthropologists would like to tell us 10,000 years. Our people say 10,000 years is only the date that the soil start to regenerate on the rocks enough to accommodate our artifacts and start hiding it. Now, the artifacts found at hidden fault across our land dates back to 10,000 years. The fish traps in Favorite Bay, the stakes that were pulled up, they were found by Lydia George's son. I'm trying to see Garfield, but it's not Garfield. Which one is it? Gabriel. One dates back to 7,500 years, and the other one dates back to 4,500 years. So that kind of throws the theory away of how long we've been here. But it would be interesting to note on the continental shelf at the end of Chatham Straits, what kind of artifacts has been petrified, laying on the continental shelf. Now, going back to the Ice Age, I used to hear my grandmother say and my mother sing. It is pushing, the water is pushing us into water. Water is pushing us into water. I often wondered, how can water push us into water? But I dare not ask a question till I came back from the army during the Second World War. And she said, son, it's not regular water that pushed us into water like flood or things like that. It was the ice frozen water that started to push us. And she said, son, when we decided to go over it, through the spiritual affiliations with animals, we were able to communicate with them through the media of the shaman. And we didn't take any of the animals because the shaman told they'll be helpful to us later. Only those that could not make it further that we took for our food. And the same thing happened to the animals. Only those of us that cannot make it further, the animals took for their food. This was kind of the agreement that the animals and human beings have made. And they marched over the ice to the interior and down south where it was warm. But as they marched, they sang, like our people have used an international Tlingit paddle song. This is what their marching song. Kanach yak tu ate ya hine ya hine we ya kanach yak ne. I think I got excited because these are ancient songs. I got excited and sang the last verse before I sang the first verse. Ya kaksi shite ya he ne ya he ne he ya he ya ya kaksi shite ya he ya. This song again throws away the theory of the Caucasian anthropologist that said that we came from Asia. We were always here. The creator, it was said, that came from Juneau, Yeslin, the great raven. Now, he was also called a different name when the first creature that he made was the beaver, and made the beaver to be very artistic in things, build things and weave things. So he was called. We have, we have the way of shortcutting things, just like my father's people, which were Wushkakihitan, finally became Wushkitan, and the Kawakatganahitan became Kagwantan. We all shortcut things. So the real name was Nagshukahyes, raven before the nations. Nag was nations. Each community was a sovereign nation with its own government. with its own legislation. But the final legislation rested upon all the nations to make the Tlingit law and traditions. Laws that were well thought out, never changed year after year. The penalties of the crime were so high, in most cases it involved death. Person had to think twice in order to commit a crime. This is how well thought out theirs were. Now, Shukayel got shortcut. Na Shakiyel. It has no bearing on the river Nas, but it has it because it now means nations. This is where it all started. And then the ice, we marched over, we went south and came back. We came out through Beam Canal. The name of Beam Canal is Qanach. And through the long march, being humans as we are, we started to intermarry, which the Caucasian call, how did they call it now? I get excited now. Huh?
Intermarried.
No. They were intermarrying, but there's another word for it, which is considered a high crime. But they bypassed it.
Incest.
Yes, incest. It's a word that in stories like this that we don't find no humor in. But because of the sacredness of their travel and why we are here today. So they said, let us separate in name first before we do this, that it will not hurt so bad. So our family that stayed at Klukwan said, well, what are you going to call us? And what are we going to call you? They replied, let us just belong to it. Belonging to Qanach. So we migrated north. For what reason we bypassed Snow, I don't know. It has never been recorded in oral history. But we landed in Haines. And they said, this will be the end of the road, we are not going to go further. So the name became Desho. And we built a house here. We called it Deshohit. From there, we were the people that became in there, were called Deshohit Town. I think that's the way you know it too. That's the way she knows it from her father's parents, which were part of us. The name that she mentioned that were used in the Qanach Tede, Khusteen was my uncle, Oscar Boyd. This goes to show you our interwoven pattern. And we had beaver. And Qanach Tede clan also had beaver. And the Tlukwan clan also used beaver. We were one at one time. And when we were one, all southeastern, we had a name, Tlanaught, before we became each individual clan. When we were leaving this area, we gave the ownership to Tlanaught. Then we went to Tenakee. At Tenakee, one of the nobleman's nephew from the Asanke Awushkitan, shark of the freshwater sib, while seal hunting, capsized and drowned. So we gave them Tenakee Inlet as the term used in Hastuyecho to a Shi'an. We moved our hands across their face to wipe their tears. An expression of love to relinquish ownership. Then we went to Angoon. At Angoon, we settled at Kedinji'an. But the wind there hitting the shoreline was too loud, so they moved to Wuchkadada'an, turn point. But there again, where our sovereign nations were in constant battle to try to get possession of each other's territory. When a war party came, it slowed up taking the war canoes into the water on account of the round rocks that were there. So they moved up further to Chilkat, the land of the windfall. And there again, it wasn't to their liking again, so they moved to where the boat harbor is, an island across it. The name of it was Tlanaught. They stayed there and they liked it. It was good for the food caches where the water drainage will not come and spoil the potatoes, the wild onions, the carrots, and the turnips they had put in there. It was nice. It stayed dry and it stayed fresh for a long time. It wasn't until a beaver had taken them through the azimuth of Angoon. That's what Angoon means, azimuth. Then they moved over there, and Tlanaught, the name changed to Taku and Juneau, at the edge of the winter village. And that's where we settled. In the house, I think it's on a program that the Raven Moiety houses that were there. I'll go from the inland side, Kakakit, owned by the Kakwede, which is the Sakai clan. Yes, Sakehit, owned by the Nachunede. They Shuhit, by the Nachunede. Yes, hit by the Nachunede. I'll come back to the yes hit and the Shuhit. Tokkahit by the Tokyede. Steen hit by the Nachunede. Goon hit by the Nachunede. Anchak hit by the Tlanaught dog salmon. Yanchoon hit by the dog salmon again Tlanaught. Nu Shaka hit Ushkitan, the shark clan. Nu hit Ushkitan, Shark Clan. Keet Gushi hit by the Daklawide, killer whale. Taya Nasnak Keet, Daklawide, killer whale. Keet Uhu hit, Daklawide, killer whale. Hootsit Tlinide, the brown bear. Shanach hit Tlinide, brown bear. And it will be interesting to note that the time of the bombardment of the United States Navy of Angoon, the Kakwit was not there, it was still at Kak. The Hoots hit was not there yet. In Shanach hit was not there yet. Anchak hit was still at Nastushkan, Whitewater Bay. Yanchun hit was still at Nastushkan, Whitewater Bay. So was the Hoots hit and the Shanach hit. They were also at Whitewater Bay then at that time. The word Deshitan is like the word EFFN. It was affiliation of the Raven clans that in Angoon, which represents the ravens, the raven beavers, the dog salmon, and the Sakai. I couldn't help but notice the copper shields being mentioned. And it would be interesting to note copper shields in those days were like the gold bullions, representing 1,000,000. So it wasn't everybody that had copper shields. So very few copper shields were among us, but they were very valuable. Now comes the split of my people, the Qanakh. I've mentioned before, it's a common theme that a great clan has split and separated through the wrongdoings of a woman. And this is such the case of the Qanakh. So it involved the death of a young man. In one clan, there's always two sides. Always two sides. And in a house, there's always two sides again. The nobleman, where there is no draft. Now, this is the reason why when we have a potlatch, the nobility we put in the back where there is no draft. Now, this is why there were two of us. And we had a game similar to that of baseball. The bats were about 36 to 40 inches long, and they were about maybe 2.5, 3 inches thick, and it came out wide to perhaps about 5 to 6 inches. And the ball was made out of copper. They called it iqtsuna. And there were intertribal games. Each household had a team. And the cheering section were so loud because there were so many people in those days. I'm going to interject something to it so you would know what certain things that perhaps you have read about. But I'm going to leave names out with the fear that this story might hurt your feelings. Our people went to battle one time, and they were so fierce in their battle, they cut the hands out of their enemies. The battle was at sea, and they couldn't swim, they died. So one of the people was used as a guide coming to Angoon, and he didn't want to go there. But they heard the cheering, they heard the loud noise. So they asked him, what is that noise coming from towards Angoon? They're drunk, that's why they're howling. And that's where that word came from, drunken, howling Indians. Not because they were. And I brought this out just to show you how far the sound of their cheering can go. And this family that moved away from us, it was their time to pitch the ball to us. And when we batted the ball, it went into the water and it floated. And it has always been said that a lot of young people pass remarks without thinking about their remarks. Such was the case of one of our young men from our side of the family. He laughed. Hey, are you folks so poor that you just throw an imitation at us? Bingo. They found the reason to split from us. Our historian tells us the women folks from both sides, the one that were going to leave us and that one that were going to stay with us, were both helping each other taking things down to their canoes. But the men were silent. They backpedaled from the shore, watching us. When they came out to where our dock is at, they stopped. For reason that we had harbored a certain family, they threw slander at us. Hey, Sam Gaishu, you have no land. Hey, Tsuhu, Anyadihu, there's no nobility among you. Kayiyahiku, you folks are witchcraft. Not because that we were, because of the family that we had harbored. So my grandmother, Tin, asked his slaves to take 3 copper shields. So to the north point in front of Angoon, they went there. Told the slaves, throw 1 copper shield overboard. They threw 1 copper shield overboard. So the name Tlangushu, that you have no country, became a name of honor because it was bought, the slander was bought by a million. So throw another one there, she said. They threw it there. This is for your slander, saying there is no nobility among us. So another noble name was born. Throw another one there. They threw another one there. This is for telling us we are witchcraft. So another name was born into the nobility ranks. because it was hway, because it was slander. This is the reason why, when our friends left, they owned the Raven House. We stepped into the Raven House and came out of the Deshuhit. And our grandchildren that we put in the Deshuhit were from another house called Anshukahit. They were Anshukahit Tal. But we put them in there to build fire and to keep fire in that house, to preserve it. So the names of the people that were in charge of the Yesit was Yesnao. Every time a person dies that our caretaker, another person took his place, that name also went with being caretaker of the house. Such the base that they owned, Whitewater Bay, South Arm, Hood Bay, Sitco Bay were owned also by the Arkanach Ade family that moved away from us. And for this buying and throwing of copper shields overboard, we also obtained the title to those bays. Now this is how we came to possession of the Yesit. In our counterpoint, we know only a few that's left. Our history tells us they moved into the interior and some stayed in Klukwan, which is the Jimmy Fox people. And they're his nephews, Charlie Morrison. But how many of those people can relate themselves to that family that moved from us? I'd like to come back to two households again. The Kagwete from the Kakakwit. Our story leads us to the fact that they came down with the Taksawede, perhaps from the Teslin area. Their names up in the Teslin area corresponds with the names that is being used presently by the Kakwede. And the Tokyede from Tokkahit also migrated down with the Taksawede, also stayed at Basket Bay with the Basket Bay Sakais. When the beaver turned Basket Bay upside down, normally the bedrock is underneath the sand, but in Basket Bay, the bedrock is over the sand. And it's over this arc that Tokyede built their first house. That's where the name comes, Tokkahit. So naturally we called it the Ark House. So but they were adopted into the the Deshi town, became part of the Deshi town, so that the difference between the Deshi town and the Deshi town are two different things. As I explained, that the Deshi town is affiliation of the Raven Moited clan that comprises the Raven Moiety in Angul. Being its time being very short, there's a lot I would like to interject, but I just made notes of those important parts of our migration, where we came from, how we became what we are today, and what do we represent. And it's been stated before, because perhaps some of these things I am saying will come back to me, which is true. But like I said, it has to be brought out. Is there an appropriate time to say these things, to bring it out? There could never be. We have to make the appropriate time ourselves, which is the things that we today will have to accept in good faith, not because we want to hurt your feeling, because the history should be told in the way they were made. I'm glad to hear that the things that my aunt had to say. She's my aunt because Shenguke Denush Kitan are the same people, and I'm a child of them. And the same thing that was told to them is told to me. Don't tell people what you are. Let them see what you are. These are the same. This is the way our people were taught. And our people had always apologized for things, because you can't take back what you have already said. They were made. There was a man in Klukwan area, Tlingit Tlanaught, which we use in a party so much. He was a consultant. People went to him for his decision. Whatever problem they had, they seeked him for the solution of the problem. And in this one case, the problem was the life of a man. They wanted to pass judgment on his life. But as today, it became a hung jury. So they sent for Tlingit Tlanaught. When he came, they told him the situation. Now they said, now we're looking for you to solve this problem for us. He said, goodness, Chish, thank you. I wish I was a feather, that where I fall, it may not hurt. I wish I was an old tree, rotten, that I may not make sparks, that it may fall on you and burn you. He got up and left. So the man was freed. And today we still use his knowledge.
That means good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you going to tell me?
That means they say good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yet adu inch kachalninke yet a kainich. Telt a she that they let catch was co. Tlechel kachi takaya utusa koha kosti. Ja hit yanun tuliachi talk hit yanu tuliachi. That is the good daksakshea dukhanichu. Prince Rupert there. I open house you do a talk. Hans to head you do a talk hit. Which the hood was a cool and a silk or hush. Yeah, there's a lot of things. I've never been to school or anything. I can't even write my name. So I got Jeff Leer here to explain what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try to make it short so we have finished before 5.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm going to talk about culture first. Ohanaya ako.
We are the people of Taku, and to begin with, she said that it is only in our culture that we do. It is not only because the white man came into. We became when the white man came to teach us our manners on what to do. We had a way to say good afternoon in our Tlingit language, and we have a way when we call it an open house, which is a dedication of our tribal clan. And she mentioned the Takit when it was finished, how they opened it, and to begin with, and she also stated that. Jeff Leer has been a student of hers. I mean, she has talked and told stories to him, and that's why she expected him to interpret for her. And now she said she is going to begin to tell the story about the culture. Go ahead, Jeff. She wants to.
What let ako tell awak you do sak let ako yeti. Ja, doet ako nachnadaye. Ja, they akhe with awak.
There's a place in the lower Taku River called Awak, which means goose slough, literally, but it's actually a kind of swampy area, and the tide comes in and floods this area.
With awak. Achaya yeudua sat aku.
And this area is flooded when the geese come there, and this is why the name of the river is Aku. The ku part means flooding.
That yet let catch a kaya khasaya sak. Achaya aktuasiko konachta kakhonike.
The white people just have a sort of a knowledge of it, but that's why I wanted to explain the meaning of the word aku.
May I? Yeah. I just would like to add, because it's so important that, the geese flood, the flooding of the geese. So, and she mentioned that, so I didn't hear Jeff mention the geese. And sheesh.
In Kananik,
my father and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law used to tell me these things, and they would say, be of good courage and be sure to tell your children these things.
Achpan Tilakach ise ako.
The white people will pull your land and your possessions out from under you. So do not forget these things.
Achayagi that Achtoasiku Kachlanige. Achay yet a Klukwan you ayahatu sakon shukunach.
That's why I want to tell you these things. We were originally called, from the beginning, we were called the Klukwan, the people of the Taku River.
Hashikadeku Takana Udwa Sako Achatashikawa Ja Ach Ishkawe Ahu Ayodudliach Talk Hitti.
There's a place between the Taku River and Juneau that's called Tlanaught, and that's where we made a winter house.
Hit Khasawda say hit Kartulayech Odua Wuzuka Shukadeka Hawasawe Wayan Hawek and Uwa.
Then they asked their leader, what shall we make our house out of? And there were hemlock growing there.
That's right. Yendushni aya tukelkesa kawaka kuka hedishukach tutano hit. The Prince Rupert the Katzeek at Kuyudi Kuyandahin.
Then, when the house was done, they were going to have a housewarming ceremony, and they invited people from all over, including Prince Rupert. That is the nephews of the leader.
Hawasaya wasa kakakaktusa yahit koa. Hawaha nachtusa kotsaya yanchaya hit kotuliech yan yeti ohan.
So his nephews asked him, well, what shall we call the house? And he said, well, so that we will have a way to name it. Let us name it after the hemlock that it was made out of. So it will be called Yan Hit, and the name of our people will be Yan Yedi.
Yan Kos Yan Yedi Shah Koksati Ohanya Kakasati Hayat Ekos Yan Yedi Yat Koksati.
The men are called Yanyedi, and the women are called, the women of the clan are called Yanyedi Shah, and our children are called Yanyedi Yetke.
Khayeb Yanyedi Dachkhan Ayo Yagdiado Ahashitakha Dakushek Kalya is Ute.
And also our grandchildren, the grandchildren of the Yanyedi, there may be some here, but I don't know what their names are.
Has Yanyedi Dachkhan Hasusiti has to Clara Yanyedi. Has to feel an adequacy, is it a issue to Sakon? Has to talk us an idiot equity.
The person that she's referring to, their mother was a child of the Yanyedi, and Oh, and their grandfather's name was Yeskeda-ish. That's a Cook-Hitan name, right? Yeah.
Achtejadech in Katuniki, Ayah Kachanik. Just a Katie 18 has to hit the Yayani, the Katuk Ayit other Ayin.
And I'm telling you what I have been told. They had houses in many different places. One of them was at the cave where the Taku Lodge now is.
Yet awit anta ayin hitlen years a sagon.
And there was also one at Aukwa'an, which is near Bishop Point. There was the name of it was called a big house.
Yet awit anak where a kahawdu a kasudu say yan hit yan yiti.
And then there was the original one at Taka'anak, the original Yen Hit or Hemlock House.
I haven't got time to tell about the other ones. Tatlaya ayataku watch. Yake adech sikuya. Takat kahwani geko aya. Tlel ayach gau ha chiyat. Hagunal cheese.
We don't have enough time for me to tell about all the things that I know in the other houses, but thank you for listening to me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Tlingit from the interior. I'm the leader of the Cookhitan, the pit house people.
Cesar,
thank you very much for listening to me. I won't be speaking for very long.
Is the eater Kahan Cookhitan?
I stand for the Cookhitan people.
Shukwa I Cookhitan Sharahani Kuka Yudusagan.
The first leader of the Cookhitan was named Kuwak-a.
Dak Kadan Sadak Eitkach.
They migrated from the coast up to the interior. And then they multiplied and became numerous.
Yanedi Cookhitan
And the interior, what's that?
Yeah.
And the interior Cookhitan, what's that? Oh, and the Yanyedi of the interior were born through the Coquitlam of the interior.
Coquitlam is precies Gohaskosidi.
The Coquitlam were their grandparents.
Kachlik Kansatu the Sagan.
Our grandfather was named Kachan Tlaat.
An Gundach Queer Yetin Achlik Kang Sat.
My grandfather, Kachan Tlaat, was from Angoon.
Con con Cesar, riding saw I showed the naked Klukwan how you cook second in a good being scoffed the nick. You could eat a hot and show the naked.
Thank you very much for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have enough time for me to talk much more. That is how we came to be numerous in the interior. And thank you again, honored ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. I walk to a Tlingit good afternoon. You could hot coy or ayaki. Ayagushi. You owe you a hawk. Clutch esu at Gatsati, the Hawk Clay is Skoon Dawaki out of Ziwu. I was only a little girl when my father and mother, they all passed away. And they sent me to school. For a while, I thought I know as much as the white people know. I thought I learned from the school everything. But I didn't. I had kohotina we. Tatago kohanie hatuti. Yanedi awa a hohusiti. I got married, and Yedi man was my husband. George at the cut a hetke, Yanedi at a hasiti. Hatuju yewa wuti to a ignachania hatnati. That's the reason why all my children are Yanedi children. And the second time I got married, I was married to a Yanyedi again. He wasn't quite full native. He had some Filipino blood in him. John ko awa Yanyedi city. So who do I do at Gawachie has to Yanyedi at city? Hatsu Yanyedi de Hatoa. I'm a Yanyedi child myself. My father his name was Taku Jack. I guess everybody knows, I guess even today, I bet you there's some people that know him. I think, what's his name now, Austin Hamill? He must know my father, Taku Jack, his name was. Who to do a sock, Kajike. Yanyedi away at he was a Yanyedi. He was the first chief in Athlone. Kashukwa chief who city Athlone. Government that you work to do a tea stamp or to do a tea. The government, he got a paper from the government with a government stamp on it that he was the chief. And that's my father. Taku Jack. There was 4 boys in our family. and 2 girls. They all passed on. Tlanaught de kochtiti dat ach ik dat ake hasune achtlag so. Ai dat kwat Tlanaught kochtiti. Kokhet tana wachat. I'm a kokhet tan. Ja, kan ha ake ajiwa achlish. My grandmother came up Taku River. Her name was Latin. And my mother's name was Keishi. And we were Kokatan. All along Taku River, there was lots of people living there. Has de goe aie has dat hier zu Kokatan, has de hoog goe has de kani an goe has de city we Kokatan. Janie die kani has de city. Je awa siku je awa ach chanchach in kanigin. Ach in aksanik nijin. Ach woku awa Telegraph Creek the hot would see get we atlan gewuti. Do ish giwa wat akona hutsu. My father-in-law, he came from Telegraph Creek part. His mother came back from Telegraph Creek, but his father was from around Taku River. And they taught me a lot of things. Aqawach at wachchano echat da khanich. Silski da shir kash. Silski da shir one. Kawa kaya kudziti. Kudutin nich wasa kudusti kawasa koti. Don't brag about yourself, my mother-in-law used to say to me. Never brag about yourself. People got eyes. They can see you. They can see what kind of a person you are. So never brag about yourself. That's what she used to tell me. I still got that in my head today. I never brag about myself. I never think I was any better than any of my people. That's the way I look at it. And my father-in-law taught me the same thing too. Like everybody else say, don't make it too long. So I'm not going to make it long. I could say the same. I got lots in my mind because I was almost 10 years in the bush with my father-in-law and my mother-in-law. And when my father-in-law and my husband used to go out trapping, running the traps, my mother-in-law is the one that used to tell me the stories. Ach, inch kasnik nich wahana qata khodan qaadin. Qanukash yukhadanas khech tu dayen qanukt. Why take oka kakhatna nich? Chakutusti. Qissaku daya inch kakhalnik. Aqa ochush kach. You That's the reason why I know a lot of things that she tells me. Before I finish, I only want to sing one song for you people. Stakat wait yaqini akhanian khadakh siti qatsu akhsik khadakh siti qatsu khadakh siti hawase akhtuyak inu akhlat kiyidat Katzeek she awake kwashi ahu ashi awa ha in ke akoshinik This is my father-in-law's song. He was telling us about it himself. He went out beaver hunting. They call it Jennings River in White Way. He said he was packing his gun, walking up on the riverbank. Well, he knew how good. Job with our achase at dushi. Akawaye to ditan. All of a sudden, he heard somebody singing, and he thought to himself, I'm not the only one that's hunting beaver here. Somebody else is hunting beaver here. And I bet the boat is coming down the river. He stood one place and listened to it. Atusi ach, deshkitesta say us tinch. Hagu said yayak. He stood one place for a long, long time. The song was coming closer and closer and closer, and he kept to himself, well, where is the boat? What's going on anyway? So he stood there and looked. Pretty soon the sound was coming right from the other side of the river. He looked really hard to see. Then he saw that beaver was swimming down. His mouth was wide open, just like this. And that's the beaver that was singing. And he looked at it really good. He told us himself that story.